Yeah.
We're live on YouTube now, Chair.
Thank you very much. Welcome to this virtual meeting of the EDEI Scrutiny Panel. Can I remind all participants that normal rules of procedure apply? For example, comments and questions need to be put through the chair. As we are meeting virtually, the proceedings may take slightly longer, so your patience is appreciated. While members of the public can view this meeting via YouTube Live, they will not be able to actively participate or comment on proceedings. As this meeting is being live streamed, can I remind all participants that their conduct should reflect this? So agenda item number 1 is apologies for absence. I know we've got apologies from Councillor Hubbard and we've got Councillor Platt to substitute. Welcome, Councillor Platt, and apologies from Councillor Story. Is any other apologies?
I've not received any, Chair. I think everyone else is present.
That's great. Thank you very much. Agenda item number 2, declarations of interest. Is there any declarations? I can't see that there is. Okay, so agenda item number 3 are the minutes from the last meeting held on the 1st of December. I'll take them as being read unless there's anyone that wants to raise anything with those minutes that they need amending or changing. Can't see there's anything from the panel, so I'll take them as being read. Agenda item number 4 is the Captain Cook Square Shopping Centre regeneration. And we've got the Director of Regeneration in attendance. Quite a pertinent subject, obviously, is the purchase of the Cleveland Centre as well. So I just want to caveat the presentation, if it's all right, Richard, by saying that whilst the focus is on Captain Cook Square, I will allow questions, not to put you on the spot, but about the wider strategy of investment, if that's okay, Richard.
It is, that's fine, Chair. I haven't actually done a presentation. I was just going to talk through where we're at, largely because a lot of stuff I would have to put in a presentation is probably still commercially confidential in terms of Captain Cook Square. But I'll give you a general update to the panel. So we've obviously owned the Captain Cook Square Centre for a while now, and we've been through a process whereby we focused on the one area at the top end around the square near the car park, and due to a bit of I suppose I'd have to say bad fortune of some retailers leaving, but obviously it's good from the perspective of the conversion of the centre. And we've taken some proactive steps with others where we know that there were issues. We've managed to get vacant possession on quite a few areas around that central square. We've managed to let 60,000 square foot to Lane 7, and obviously they've got their licensing and stuff. That's all kind of out in the public domain. And we've got in the Peacocks unit, we've got an esports business going in there that, again, we expect to open around a similar time to Lane 7. Now, they both require, as a lot of the other units around that central square, require the council to do some work to make them suitable for leisure, to update the units, to update the frontages. And some of that work is starting on, I think it might even be started by now, because it might have been yesterday. So there will be some work going on around there. Some of it's quite specific in the 2 units that are currently let. Some of the other stuff will be slightly more generic to frontages and making them suitable for lettings. Now, we've got a reasonable list of potential occupiers that have got kind of designs on other units around there, but they're not at the same stage. We've had one that's been at, well, technically we've got another 2 that are at heads of terms, but there's still issues over whether they'll go ahead because of, investment in their businesses and other things. So there's nothing else at this stage that we can announce, but we are working with quite a reasonable range of different types of leisure use to go in some of those other spaces. So we're quite confident, certainly by the summer, we'll have quite a lot of that space let. It won't be occupied necessarily by that stage, some of it, because obviously there's a lead-in time to doing that. But the pipeline of potential occupiers is quite healthy. There's quite a bit of demand from people who, put this politely, people who would want to be in there, but we don't think necessarily fit with what we're trying to achieve as well. So we could have taken some quite easy let-ins, things that would have made it a little bit of a mix that's not necessarily the right one for what we're trying to achieve. So we have pursued, quality operators. We have pursued certain types of operation, and that looks like it will pay off. But like anything, until we get them signed and announced, a lot of that stuff is kind of commercially confidential and to some degree still speculative. But we've certainly got those two main ones where the landlord works have started or will be starting this week, and they're looking at opening probably late spring, early summer.
Thank you.
Happy to take any questions, but some of it I might have to say that's commercially confidential, and I'll only do that if it genuinely is.
Thank you, Richard. Councillor Saunders.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just two quick ones, Richard. How confident are you of the existing tenants in the Captain Cook Centre staying there? I'm thinking obviously the big one, the Wilcos are there, aren't they? Because if it's going to be more leisure, are they going to get the footfall to keep in there?
Yeah, I mean, and this is only my personal opinion rather than any kind of factual stuff that we've worked out with Wilkinson's. But I think the Wilkinson's in Middlesbrough seems to be relatively secure. Obviously, the announcement the other day came as a surprise, but it doesn't seem to put ours under threat. If anything, it probably secures it a bit more. It is the kind of shop that will survive in the middle of something like that. But in the longer term, Wilkinson's may feel that they're in a building that's too big for them. They may feel that if they're in the middle of leisure, they may prefer to be somewhere else. But one of the things that we are able to do and have made all of the tenants aware is that we do have other options for them. So if a Wilkinson's or a somebody else, and I could name other names, but I would just be naming them because they're there, not because we're in discussions with them. We've got other options to accommodate them now, and obviously I know we'll come on to it, but we've got a bigger portfolio of space to put them in now. But at the moment, we're not worried about Wilkinson's, and I don't think Wilkinson's are worried about the leisure bit. That's
great, Richard. Thank you. Just a quick one again, Stefan, if that's okay. Just going back to Lane 7. Am I right in saying Lane 7 at the bottom of North East, the big building?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So they will be moving from there, obviously, to the Captain Cook Centre. Are they going to operate the two of them?
As I understand it, they're going to operate the two of them.
Right.
Obviously, the thing that they're putting in Captain Cook Square will include bowling, but it's a whole host of other things as well. Whether they remain in Centre North East in the longer term, that's a decision for them. But at the moment, it's not a move; it's an additional thing. But you can understand why in the future that might not be the case.
Yeah, it's just quickly. I mean, I read the plan and they open to get a 14 lane bowling alley in there, so it's going to be a big bowling alley, that isn't it? If
it is.
So, yeah. Okay, Richard. Thank you. Thanks, Chair. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions from members? Councillor Furness.
I was just wondering, the purchase of the Cleveland Centre, does that include the Centre North East? Because that's like in the same footprint.
No. That's a separate property owned by other private individuals. So it was always separate from the Cleveland Centre ownership.
No. And the ownership of the Cleveland Centre, how far does it reach the footprint? Is it because the car park almost extends over towards the Centre North East? The Hilton is the hotel as well. Like, where does it cut off? Is it literally just the unit inside the building?
That's quite a complicated answer for me to give without a plan in front of me. I'll provide one showing the red line boundary, but essentially it's the shopping centre, it's the car park, it's the Barclaycard unit, a former Barclaycard unit on the top. It's the Barclays unit that's on Corporation Road.
Yeah.
But it's not Centre North East.
Yeah. Okay. I was wondering if the hotel is that included, because that's sort of on that side as well. But That's all for now. Thanks.
I think Sam's got his hand up because he probably knows the answer to that specific bit.
Yeah, the hotel actually forms part of the freehold of the property, so it does come along with it. It's under an active lease to the hotel.
Okay.
It's not impossible to carve it out at some point in time. And my understanding is the former BHS unit, the Sports Direct unit, is a private appendage to the building as well, so that's not part of it.
Okay, so we don't know that one. Okay, thank you.
And just to kind of expand on that a little bit, one of the things, and I'm sure we'll get into the reasons why we've purchased it, but one of the things that the previous owner could have done and was suggesting that they would be looking to do is sell off the bits of it where there is, like where the hotel is, that's obviously an income earner for them. Where the Barclays branch is, that's a big income earner for them. They could have sold those off separately and left a centre that was probably lacking in those long leased secure tenants, and that would devalue it significantly. So that was something that we wanted to try and avoid, because that means that somebody could come along and cherry pick those good bits and buy the good bits and leave the rest of it to potentially go downhill.
Thank you.
I've got Councillor Morstan.
Yes, thank you, Chair. A quick comment on the Captain Cook Square. We're going to refurbish or change the shop front for the Lane 7. Will this be a case for everyone else who moves in to the units and wants the frontage changed? What I'd like to see as well, when the centre was built, it was supposed to have a New Orleans touch to it. That never happened because there's no life on the first floor.
Mm-hmm.
Are there plans for making the whole place look more attractive and having some signs of life on the first floor, apart from filling all the units below? And a quick question or comment on the Cleveland Centre. The hotel, correct me if I'm wrong, but did we get a loan to pay something towards this hotel? Do we have a financial interest? And the final question is the Endeavour, the scale model of the Endeavour, going to return to the Cleveland Centre where it should be, instead of languishing in a shed somewhere, goodness knows where? Thanks, Chair.
I'll try and take those in turn. In terms of the Captain Cook Square question, the lettings that we've done so far do involve the upper floors. Most of the stuff that we're talking to potential occupiers about, again, around the square, includes the upper floors. So at the minute, you've got a shop downstairs, you've got storage upstairs. We would expect that we would be actively letting for active use both floors. That does necessitate some changes to the outside, but I think unless the occupier wants them, they are relatively cosmetic changes. They're not fundamental ones. Some of the occupiers potential occupiers are looking at using an outdoor terrace, but obviously they come at a cost, and it'll depend whether it works for them and it works for us. But yes, there is definitely a plan to make it look better, but also to bring the upper floors to life. Whether we can achieve New Orleans, I'm not sure, but we'll do our best.
That was wishful thinking a long time ago. Thanks.
Yeah. The second question was about the hotel and the financing of. I'll probably ask Sam to comment on that in a second, and I've already forgotten what the third question was. Tom, sorry.
The ship.
The ship.
Return the Endeavour. Thank you.
All of the work we've done on the Cleveland Centre so far has been about finances and spreadsheets and all of that kind of stuff. We've not given that any thought yet. Obviously, we'll take your comment on board, but don't know is the answer at this stage. We haven't discussed that.
Can I just come back on? Thanks so much for that, Richard. Appreciate it. But I think the Endeavour, considering the endeavours by this council and members and the mayor to get the ship back into the Cleveland Centre, and it being turned down constantly by the previous owners, I think for us not to make every endeavour to replace it would be a mistake. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Branson.
Thank you, Chair. as regards the James Cook Centre, are we intending to have any food outlets there? And second thing is, if we are intending to have any food outlets out there, will they be able to use the open area in front of their premises for eating outside instead of inside of the premises?
Yes to both of those. I mean, when people occupy the space, I think they get up to the curtilage of the property comes to more or less where the canopy ends. So some of the people that we're talking to are intending to use that outdoor space for, outdoor eating and everything like that. Whereas some of the other ones we're talking to about whether they would want to do something extra beyond that. So we would always intend that central area within the square to provide something that is inevitably it's going to be seasonal, because it has to be in Britain, I guess. But we are anticipating that will be used as an event space at times. It'll be used for extending the eating and drinking potential of different venues to fit their plans. So yes, there'll be lots of food and beverage in there. Yes, people will be able to do that outside, but the scale to which they can do that will increase and decrease in line with other things that are planned. And as I say, on a seasonal basis, probably.
If I can run on from that, Richard, because that really answers part of the question. If you are going to have an area there for outside performances, which I think is a good idea, would it be worth creating something that was covered? I'm talking about the performance area. I mean, I talked earlier about roofing the whole area, and I know that is a very expensive thing. I understand that. But roofing a performance area might be useful, because one of the problems you have with any kind of performance, if it does rain, it stops the performance. And something rather like a bandstand kind of structure, I'm not saying exactly the same, but that kind of idea might be something to think about. And then it would be possible to ensure that performances could continue even if you did have poor weather. Is that feasible?
It's feasible in a way. I think what would probably be difficult is having a permanent structure there. But when we're looking at how the event space gets used, that's one of the factors that we'll take into account, because there are temporary structures you can put up to do that. And one of the things that we haven't determined is, are we looking to buy something that we can put up, or are we just looking for something that we know we can rent when we need it? So that's part of the considerations for that central space. But yeah, absolutely take the point that the more of a roof you can have on there, the better it is. But I think we've been through the initial look at, could we use those kind of almost domed tent type roof structures that you get at places like Dalton Park on the way up to Sunderland. And it's just prohibitively expensive if you don't build those in from the start.
I understand.
But a more kind of events focused, covering the event rather than the attendees is certainly something that we are looking at. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Next is Councillor Coop.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I think it's very good news that the council investing in both the Cleveland Centre and Captain Cook Square. It shows the commitment from the council to support not only the leisure but the retail industry, and I think it should give a good message to all the companies out there that the council are determined to keep Middlesbrough as a vibrant centre it is. I know things are changing. I know it's been said, and it's been said by you, Richard, that we have to move away from retail simply because a lot of things are going online. But having been brought up in Middlesbrough and having seen all the changes, I remember the streets before the Cleveland Centre, what it used to look like. So it is an important thing to do, but we've got to say to people, this is Middlesbrough, and if we did get city status, which we can always dream and hope, we can actually go ahead and bring the town, keep the town living and really bring some of the areas back to life. So I just hope that this may not be the final purchase of whatever, but I think it's a definite thing out there, and it's a definite pro for the town, and I think council need to be congratulated. Thanks.
Councillor Jim Platt.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Richard, now that we own the car park, is there any chance of making the car parking spaces a little bit bigger? Because the cars, the modern cars are bigger than the old cars and the spaces are still the same size. Wouldn't it be a good idea for Middlesbrough Council to be the first people in the country, I think, to make their car parking spaces bigger?
We've actually had customers write to us to ask for that already. So it is clearly one of the things that we'll look at. Obviously, we've only just taken ownership of the centre, and I should stress, we've taken ownership of the centre without any clear plan to completely change it or do anything with it. At the moment, we're going to operate it as it is, so we're not looking to make fundamental changes at the minute. But naturally, areas like the car park and other things, we've got a bit of scope to look at. So one of the things that I know that we need to look at is what we use the car park for. Because realistically, the car park is bigger than the shopping centre needs just for the shoppers. So we need to look at, do we link any of those spaces to Centre North East? Do we link any of those spaces to other people who want to buy car parking spaces in the town? Do we change the size of them? Do we change the designation of them? That's the sort of thing that we can proactively look at, rather than at this stage we're not doing something as fundamental as we are at Captain Cook Square. But there are things, and the car park's probably a good example, where we are going to have a good look at what we do with it. But there's no firm plan yet.
Thank you.
Councillor Saunders?
Thanks for that, Chair. Thanks for letting me come back in. Yeah, just regarding the Captain Cook Centre, Richard, how safe is the bus station as we know it? You know, since we've purchased this Captain Cook Centre and the amount of work that's going to be involved in changing it over to leisure, how safe is that bus station, as I say, as we know it? Thanks, Chair.
In the short term, very. And obviously some of the work that we're doing because of the purchase of Captain Cook Square is to improve the frontage of the bus station onto Captain Cook Square. And obviously it's been a topic for discussion in the past, that if you look at an aerial picture of the town centre and you were designing it for, you know, the next few decades, you wouldn't have 4 shopping centres. You wouldn't have a large concrete bowl in the middle of it for the buses. You'd do it differently. Now, whether that means we ever will do it differently, don't know. But there are more efficient ways of using that space for buses. But whether we'll have the money to do that, or the will to do that, or anything else, I don't know. And there is not currently any plan to do that, or any funding to do it. So in the short term or short to medium term, it's certainly
Thank you.
It's certainly not high on the agenda.
Chair, just on a personal note, I'd like to congratulate you and the Mayor and everybody involved in securing this purchase of the Cleveland Centre. As you alluded to earlier, you know, we have 4 shopping centres, and for the council to take active action in purchasing the Captain Cook and the Cleveland Centre to secure the town, I'd really like to congratulate everybody involved. Cheers, Chair.
Could I just comment on that, please, Chair? Well, first of all, thank you for that. But actually, it's involved an awful lot of people and over an awful long time. So there's a lot of people. I suppose the Mayor probably won't mind me saying this, but the Mayor and I might get involved in the discussion to do it. But actually, all the real hard work's been done by people like Sam and Sam's team, people in valuation of estates, people in legal. It's been a huge piece of work, because it's not just an expensive asset, it's a very complex one. You've got all of the different tenancies, you've got all of the different income streams. So it's been a big job, but obviously we're very relieved it's over the line.
Yeah. As I say, sorry, Chair, as I say, you're right in mentioning Sam and other members of your staff, that, you know, they are the unsung heroes, like a lot of the departments within the council. So once again, congratulations to everybody.
Just very quickly, I gathered Sam wanted to come in on a previous topic. Sam, I'm sorry I didn't see you.
Yeah, it was only a to fill in the gap for Councillor Mawson's question on the financial involvement in the hotel. The council does have a financial involvement in the hotel. We provided a principal loan for part of the hotel back in 2016-17, I believe, and that was a loan structure of about £7 million that it was matched by private investment, but we are the principal lender, so if anything goes wrong, we get our money out first. But in the meantime, that's been generating a revenue return for the council of approximately £250,000 a year, and the deal will expire in the next year or so, where the council either gets paid out by the company itself, or it remortgages, if you like, and pays the council back. Or we could potentially choose to maintain that long-term interest, depending if the revenue return is worthwhile for council services.
Thanks very much, Sam. Appreciate that. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Is there any input from any of the members? Are we okay with that topic for now? Thank you for your attendance, Richard and Sam. You're welcome to stay, but you don't have to. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you.
The next agenda item is regarding our green strategy review topic. We were intending to get the TVCA here to talk about public transport. We weren't able to secure the people that we wanted, so we have for February for the next meeting. So a bit lastminute.com, we have got the head of economic growth and transport, and the transport infrastructure manager in attendance to give a presentation or a talk. So I'll hand it over to, is that you, Sam? Sorry, apologies.
Yes, Chair. I don't know if Jeff Field, as the sponsor of the wider green strategy, wants to say anything first, but I'm more than happy to just introduce where we're at.
Yeah, please, Sam. Thank you.
Yeah. So the Regeneration and Culture Department covers some of the strands of the wider corporate green strategy for the council, and largely it's for the council to set an example and provide information and infrastructure to enable businesses and residents, as well as the council itself, to change its behaviours and adopt sustainable behaviours and strategies. In doing that, we need to give credible and affordable alternatives in public transport in particular, and for people to actually navigate around the town, and making those positive green behaviours more instinctive and not seen as a personal burden or a compromise for individuals or businesses. This is increasingly important as well, our actions with the green strategy, given climate change and especially the acute current situation with energy costs. It's not all about reducing energy consumption, but it is a significant part of what we do, and finding alternative and sustainable energy sources to actually drive our economy, both in terms of businesses and public transport. So the Regeneration Culture Directorate leads on two of the themes within the green strategy, and that's the local economy theme of how we build our economy and support local businesses to change their behaviours and become more sustainable, and the transport theme, which Craig leads on, which we'll go into more detail with in a moment. And that doesn't actually limit our involvement in other issues, the cross-cutting themes with planning colleagues, building into policies and procedures, and the corporate estate, how we actually manage council buildings. So the green strategy as it stands at the moment, much of the work is based on existing powers that the council has, and making sure that our policies align with the work that we're trying to achieve, and existing resources. There's not necessarily new funding around at the moment, although we are looking at opportunities through emerging and new funding programs, such as our involvement on a Tees Valley level with Tees Valley Combined Authority, and the cross-working we do with other authorities there, as well as the emerging levelling up funding programs and shared prosperity fund, which will hopefully be emerging this year, which will be the successor to the European monies that were largely targeted at a lot of these energy efficiency and sustainability measures. So in general, progress has been very positive, as many of the principles of the green strategy have already been embedded in council work and departmental work programs for some time. I'll let Craig go into the specifics of the the transport strand of the green strategy and some of the work achieved to date, some of the activities and achievements, and that will include some major strategies such as the local implementation plan and some major investments such as electric vehicle charging points, some of which will go to executive today, in fact, for that final endorsement. So just to hand over to Craig to go through some of the actions and activities that have been going on.
Thanks, Sam. If people have got questions, could you possibly just wait till I've done a bit of a brief update, because I think some of it might actually answer some questions that I think colleagues may have. So thanks for inviting myself along this morning. So as Sam's touched on, I'm the lead on the transport side of the green strategy. So I just kind of wanted to update as to what the council have currently been doing at the moment. So there are a number of key objectives within our theme within the overall green strategy. So the first one I'd like to just kind of give a bit of a brief update on is that we are encouraging the use of uptake of walking and cycling across Middlesbrough. So there's a couple of sub-strands within that. The first one is how the council are working at developing a walking and cycling network that will encourage modal shift for both Middlesbrough residents and businesses and workers that are commuting in and out of Middlesbrough each day. So we're naturally trying to expand our walking and cycling network as much as we can. As Sam's alluded to, our local implementation plan, LIP for short, is going to executive this afternoon for final endorsement on that. And within that local improvement plan, what I think I've previously come to Scrutiny for to update on is the council have kind of flipped the vehicle and road user hierarchy around. So at the moment now we are following DFT guidance and national policy that pedestrians and cyclists should have priority on the road, that it's not predominantly car users, which I know that city councillors and our department long term have been trying to establish, that we get this embedded fully across Middlesbrough. It'll be a slow process, but we are seeing some smaller gains that hopefully will kind of go across the whole town really. So we've implemented a couple of new cycle lanes, predominantly in the last 12 months along Lower Lane. It was a big scheme to get in and make sure that we obviously connecting up new developments with the existing network and improving our east-west connectivity. And I know some of the councillors that are on today runs through their wards as well. So it was good to get that in and kind of starting to see some modal shift for not necessarily just for commuters, but seeing a lot of families using the network as well, because that's something that we've kind of never really seen before. We want to obviously then work to encourage people to walk to and from school. We want to develop a travel planning service, which we are looking at getting embedded in the planning process as well, so that when people move to new developments, they've got information, advice and guidance as to how they can access their new neighbourhood and network much better than they probably previously were. We often find that with moving homes or going to new developments, that's where people look to change the behaviours. So we want to kind of get in with developers on the ground and hopefully, you know, be able to get some 106 contributions, or enhanced 106 contributions for new schemes across the town as well. We're regularly in contact with transport providers, probably mainly try and do that through the combined authority, because we feel that we've got more pester power, in inverted commas, I think, to work with the operators. They are keen to expand their network and grow their services, but the last 18 months, unfortunately, hasn't really helped us with the pandemic, because public transport usage has declined. And slowly seeing that come back, but I think we've just got to let everything get to what a new normal will be, for want of a better expression, to see where the public transport network is going. We are working with the combined authority and the bus operators to get the bus service improvement partnership in place, and the draft partnership documentation's gone out in the last couple of weeks for the operators to come back and kind of tell us if there are any objections to what we're proposing. But they have been involved in devising the partnership and the plan, so we're hopeful that we're going to get something better than what we currently have, an expanded network, a more efficient network, and, you know, get more from the operators. We've often felt that it's been the combined authority and the likes of ourselves as a council are trying to drive things, and sometimes the operators are less likely to do that if there isn't an incentive. And unfortunately, we don't have the financial incentives to subsidise routes anymore. We haven't for a number of years, so we're working with the operators to look at how they can potentially move from different parts of the town, potentially reroute services in with new developments to make them more financially viable, and hopefully that's a win-win. If I could just go on a couple of other things, bear with you, I'm just looking at the spreadsheet. So we're obviously working with the operators to get that as part of the partnership. We want to include the rail network as well. So I know that particularly Councillor Branson's always been a vocal supporter of getting the bus and rail network integrated with each other. That in itself isn't easy, but it's taken a number of years, but we have got a direct service to London now. But we are having lots of residents and businesses kind of saying, well, how do I get to the station safer? I don't just want to use my car. I'd like to go on the bus. Or I'd like to bring my bike. But if I ride to the train station, where can I store my bike? Things like that. So we're looking at how we can work with the rail network and particularly the franchises to increase more sustainable transport options at each station. One of the other things that one of the key strands we're looking at is obviously improving the air quality within Middlesbrough. So we can monitor air quality as we do now. We've got key meter readings at various junctions in and out of Middlesbrough, and we have seen an improvement in the air quality. But one of the things that we know that helps improve air quality is to introduce 20-mile-an-hour speed limits. Now we've got them broadly in all residential areas across Middlesbrough, but there are a couple of areas that we do want to look at getting them in, because slow vehicles in urban areas, naturally improves the air quality. So that is something that we are continuing to work with the combined authority on, trying to secure additional funding to be able to put more schemes in that will allow us to do that. But the 20-mile-an-hour schemes themselves are relatively easy for us to do when we are working through. Currently at the moment, with getting some more schemes introduced in the Dunthorpe area. I think that's probably it as a kind of a bit of a summary as to what we've been doing, but I'll happily take any questions if anyone wants to get something else from me that I possibly haven't mentioned. And I'm probably going to have to make do that I'm not the combined authority, and you wanted them first, so I'm probably the next best.
Really appreciate your attendance and your input. Thanks both, Sam and Craig. Councillor Arundel.
Thank you, Chair. Is it not the case that should the extent of the Stainton Way or the Spine Road was taken through to come out at Mandale, that would offer another bus route from the south of the town, which at the present moment all seem to go down Acklam Road. And also in that scheme, there's an extensive, so the country park and whatever, extensive cycle and walking routes that would join up with the stuff at the back of Winniebanks and whatever, and give a route into the town that people would use. I think people are a bit frightened to ride cycles along Acklam Road, to be quite honest. But you could, if that route was opened up, it would offer an alternative bus route, which I'm sure there's sufficient people who would use that, to be quite honest, on all that new estate. It also shortens car journeys, so people don't have to go all the way down to the bottom of that estate and then all the way back out again if they want to go into Middlesbrough or Stockton. So what's your view on that? Do you think that the Stainton Way extension or the Spine Road coming out to Mandale would encourage further bus use and cycling and walking?
Yeah, so probably got two views on this. One as a resident, and one as a council officer. But now I think that any new road and any new development, that's where, as kind of previously stated, that I think that that's where people would change the behaviour. So currently, if people could travel in a car now, you are more likely to use a bus or a bike or walk if there are alternate routes and provision there for you. So, for example, if that Spine Road does go ahead, it comes out of Mandale or however that overall area will work as part of the master plan, I do believe that if a bus runs along there, you are more likely to pick up people because there are services there. I know particularly Councillor Coops had a lot of discussions with the bus operators with regards to the Rose Cottage development in Stainton, that people within there traditionally probably would have used cars, 2 or 3 car households. They have started to use the bus and walk and cycle more because networks have been put in. So I think anywhere where you put them in, that's where you get the modal shift, and that's where people habitually will change how they previously have travelled. I don't know whether that's answered it or not. Sorry, Councillor.
Oh, that's fine. Thank you.
Next is Councillor Branson.
Thank you very much, Chair. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. Yes, great. Thanks very much for your presentation. My main concern is the lack of bus services in south of the borough. You remember back in 2010 onwards, there were significant cuts to the bus services there, which we haven't really recovered from. And of course, this is an area of major development. I mean, there's a huge number of housing development going on there, most recently Hemlington Hall. But my main concern is that we don't have enough power over the transport operators. And I'm talking about specifically the bus companies, although the rail company also. And I just wonder whether we should be pressing for a passenger transport authority to cover the whole of the Teesside area. Because elsewhere where these things have been introduced, it gives a little bit more clout to local authorities to work together and actually get something done. Because I'm just worried, I mean, not just in provision of bus services, but across ticketing system, Oyster cars and what have you, I have this feeling that the operators are resisting. And that maybe if we had more power through the TVCA, it would be easier to get these things done. Because at the moment, I'm not sure that they're going to happen. And if they don't happen, as has been mentioned, people will make alternative arrangements, and all these people buying new houses in South Middlesbrough will be driving cars rather than catching the bus. Thanks.
Yeah, so just to answer that, Councillor, I think in essence, for all but title, the Combined Authority are a PTA. They're the Strategic Transport Authority for the area. And I think kind of the hook we've always been trying to get the operators on is the bus service improvement partnership. So obviously, once we get that in, we've had so much input to that as the 5 authorities that represent the Combined Authority area. We have tried to get so many things in there with almost a stick to beat the operators with, to say, right, we've got all of these new developments. You've been talking for years saying you want to introduce smart cards for travel, easy payment options, different marketing to get younger people on buses and people out with the cars that would traditionally have just never bothered using public transport. So we're confident that the BSIP, as it's known, has got enough teeth in there to really work with the operators, and it does give us a bit more power. It's a voluntary partnership, but it's still an agreement that is signed nationally, and the operators and all the combined authorities do sign up to that as well. But it is a partnership. We've always had a voluntary partnership, which always worked quite well. But as you know, yourself and Councillor Coop will be aware, in the south of the town, we've lost a lot of services, and it's always been on the goodwill of some of the various managing directors of the operators that have come to public meetings and said, okay, we'll trial a service. The BSIP would give us more teeth to say, we've got all these developments, you need to start looking at putting services on in this area and really looking at rerouting some of your existing network. What I would love to do as a transport authority, not the strategic one, but is to say to the operators, you don't always have to continue running your network and your operations as you currently have for the last 20 years. We know there are key bus corridors that take the bulk of patronage, but we need to look at how we can bolt on some additional corridors in the south, in Colby New and Martin Dunthorpe, to kind of gain additional patronage. If we don't put the services on, people will always just be able to say, well, there isn't a service, so I won't use it. And you're acutely aware of the issues in your ward, and obviously in the Staynon area as well, that, you know, if people aren't there en masse, the operators will say, well, we don't want to do it, but the BSIP does give us something that we haven't had previously. So again, I hope that has kind of answered the question for you.
To some extent, do you have any idea, Craig, the kind of timescale? I mean, we're actually asking Ben Houchin for funding for a service that will connect up the Parkway Centre to the areas across South Middlesbrough.
Yeah.
We've been waiting to hear from him for several months now, or at least for 2 months. I mean, do we have any idea of when we're going to know what's going to happen?
Yeah, so the BSIP is out to consultation. I've just had an email through from the DFT this morning that we're hoping to have that partnership in place by April. So obviously there'll be an objection period. That doesn't mean that you will get that service linking up the Parkway in April, but the operators are acutely aware that with this coming in, we will be going to them and saying, you know where the gaps in our network are. Now we need to work on filling them.
Well, I look forward to something positive coming. So thanks very much, Craig.
No problem.
Thank you. Next is Councillor Coop.
Yes, thanks, Chair. Yes, Craig, you mentioned a couple of things. You mentioned 20
sorry to name drop you so much to the councillor, but we know the issues that Staynton's had over the years with
Yeah, I know we do. Yes. Well, I'm glad to say that I got some match funding, etc., for some flashing speed signs yesterday out of the exec. So at least we're going to put some signs down, because some people teach low lane and they treat through Stainton Thornton like Le Mans. So I think we need to slow people down. It's all right introducing 20-mile speed limits, but you've got to enforce them, because otherwise people take no notice of them. And I am in favour of them. They should slow down through residential areas. Anyway, getting back to the main thing, one of the problems you have is when we build in new estates. We'll take Hemlington Grange, which is in my ward, for example. There is no through road at the moment. It's being put in, but of course, if you put a housing estate up with no amenities, no facilities, no shops, no anything, which is what Hemlington Grange has, everybody either has to walk or go by car. Well, if it's raining or snowing, they're going to go by car. So I would be in favour of looking at somewhere where you put the infrastructure in at the time of construction, so that you can get a bus route through. I've been talking with David Branson that we both agree that we need a better public transport system in the south of town, as we've been talking to you. So that's one thing we need to look at, because if people get used to using a car, they're just going to keep using it. So you need infrastructure in first. We need a proper plan for the south of the town. So one thing I'll be very much in favour of that. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah, and I'll just reiterate, I wholeheartedly agree and support with yourself and Councillor Branson's views on taking forward the south of the town, because I think it has been severely lacking with additional options. I know we've all spoken previously about how well served the likes of Corby Newham is for a cycle network, because it was built, it went in at the time that the developments did. It wasn't retrospectively put in afterwards, which unfortunately is how we try and do a lot of the things in the town. I know that in the Acklam area, in particular, the likes of the Stainsbury development and Hemlington Hall, we've tried to get those links in where we can. And there's things that are inevitably done afterwards. For example, the proposed Ridgeway footpath scheme in Corby Newham, linking Hemlington Hall, that's going to go in after the development's gone in, where ideally we'd have wanted all of these things in at day one, so that people move in on a Friday, which people inevitably do, and on Saturday they can go out for a walk in the local area and connect in with all the leisure and the facilities that they want to use in the local neighbourhood. But sometimes that isn't the case. It's not ideal, but we are trying and working. Our department is in the process now of producing an infrastructure plan, where we will have everything identified on a map, a plan of the whole town, knowing where we're going to have some of these pressures and where new developments are coming online, where we want to have, we can dream that it'll be a Dutch-Danish style of walking and cycling network, but we'll have an English version of a Dutch or Danish style, I think.
Thank you. Councillor Furnish, you raise your hand up?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I've been speaking with Chris Orr about the cycle scheme that's been put in place, obviously on Linfart Road, and phase one starting soon, isn't it? In the top.
It is, yeah.
And then phase two will be going through my ward, and I'm very much obviously happy with it. But the one issue I had is it's just a small corridor, and by itself doesn't do a lot. It needs to be joined up more, and the main roads I think need to be tackled, as Acklam Road, Green Lane. If we could get those roads made, I know Green Lane is in the plans, I think, for the cycle scheme, but I don't know. I just feel like if it takes too long to get Green Lane made, then by the time that is completed, the rest will be 2, 3, 4 years old, and might be so objected to, or they might not be how they should be. So I'm just a bit worried that it's too much patchwork rather than just tackling the main areas. I think Acklam Road and Green Lane and the major thoroughfares should be the ones tackled first. But I think obviously the money's coming from the TVCA, or it's coming from central government. So I understand that there's those constraints. But is there any plans for Acklam Road and Green Lane to be done soon, or speed it up somehow?
So thanks for that, Council. So what we want to do with the aforementioned infrastructure plan that our department are looking to pull together is to, we know as officers where we have the problems. Acklam Road, prime example in terms of, we want to improve cycle usage along there. How do we do it? Sometimes we're constrained with the available size of the network that we've got. If we were to take out certain lanes to enable cycling to go along, then we're kind of, it becomes a bottleneck for vehicles. So we've got to balance everything. Having said that, we are flipping around the hierarchy, so therefore we want to give pedestrians and cyclists priority. I wholeheartedly agree and sympathise that some things look patchwork, and as you mentioned, we're doing phase 1 of Linthorpe Road shortly, and then the proposals for phase 2 we've kind of drawn up with the combined authority. Unfortunately, we are financially constrained about. We'll not chase the money, but it's coming from central government, passported via the combined authority. But because government are now seeing, and the combined authority is supporting that Middlesbrough is looking to continue to develop, and we are at the forefront of ideas anyway, we just don't have enough money to do everything that we would love to do.
I mean,
I hate to draw this analogy, but as Jeff will be acutely aware, it's like potholes. We'd love to resurface everything, but sometimes all we can do is patch things over, and it's not what we want to do. But, you know, if we can do it stage by stage, I agree, we could end up finishing Linthorpe Road phase 1. In 5 years' time, we might need to revisit something on Linthorpe Road because it isn't working with what we've now just completed in year 4 at the other end of the corridor. So I take that on board, but that's what this infrastructure plan is hopefully going to do, and bring it all together.
Yeah, I mean, ideally, Councillor, it wouldn't be incremental, but as Craig alluded to, it's just the volumes of cash involved to make that north, south, east, west the dream or the ambition that we've got. I mean, ideally, in the fullness of time, Middlesbrough needs to be. You should be able to cycle or walk north, south, east, west as contiguously as possible without crossing over highways or whatever, or having big gaps in the network. But as Craig says, I mean, the first stages are get the money where we can, provide a proof of concept. It's a time-consuming and laborious process in terms of doing the right level of consultation with local stakeholders and given areas as well, and that's entirely right to do that. But by embedding it in things like the hierarchy of the adopted local implementation plan today, and such, it gives us that it's embedded in policy in a way that allows us to go and seek that additional money or prioritise it in developer contributions or whatever as developments come forward.
I think just to expand on that as well, Sam, one of the things we're wanting to do via the green strategy as well is, Sam and I have discussed this, you know, as recently as this week, that I think we, you know, ourselves as a council, we are a lead stakeholder. Everyone looks to us to do things, but I think that one of the things that we've had missing, you know, in previous years is a business representative kind of within that green strategy to drive forward some of the private sector investment. So the business will want to expand, and that's great. You know, we're all for that. But sometimes when they expand, you know, are they going to contribute to that wider network? And I think we probably need their voice at the table as well, instead of us and just the combined authority saying, "Oh, we think we should do this." Business might say, "Well, actually, we think we should do this. This is missing in this particular area of the town." So I think that's something that Sam and I are going to look to do, is to involve the private sector, to have a representative in there, so that not that we're always just going out to consultation. I mean, councillors that probably on the call will be aware of the extensive consultation we've had on Linthorpe Road phase 1, and it was good because we were able to amend the scheme of listening to businesses. But it would be good to have a solid representative of business, whether it's the Chamber of Commerce or whoever, at the table for us to enable us to listen and be transparent in developing our ideas and involving as many people as possible.
Yeah, just add on, I feel like when it's like done as it is, like Linthorpe Road, such a small stretch, the business can't see the bigger picture. They just see what's happening to them. If they saw Acklam Road, Green Lane, all those like networks feeding into the town, they might think, actually, yeah, like we're a part of a bigger thing. When they just see that, it's like they want to change just our area. And I think that's where the animosity is coming from. And I know when I've seen the plans for Linthorpe, my section, and I can see just the same problems. Obviously, I know Chris said we've tried to change things so those problems don't arise or those objections, but I can see it being the exact same. And I totally agree, and I really want the plan to go ahead as is, or even better. Like I've suggested a few things to him, but I can just see it happening, because people can only see Linthorpe Road changing. They can't see the whole town changing. And that's the frustrating part.
And that's what we want to do with our infrastructure plan, so that we actually have, physically holding my hands up here, but a big plan of the whole town so that people can see how Acklam Road then feeds into Green Lane and then goes into the avenue with Linthorpe Road, and people can kind of see, our north-south connectivity has always been pretty good. It might not be up to everybody's standards, but to be fair, we don't have congestion on a national scale. North-south has always moved pretty freely, but the public transport and sustainable transport connections to travel east-west have historically not been very good. And it's taken us a couple of years just to kind of get from Ladgate Lane to Low Lane, and then Low Lane all the way to Stainsbury. And now we want to obviously connect over into Hemlington and Staine and then join that up as well. And I think some people might see, as you said, Councillor, be less objective to some of the proposals when they can see how it all feeds in and tells that story. But sometimes selling that story isn't always as easy as we want, because you rightly saw some businesses can just see what's happening outside their door.
So so they say there is going to be a plan. You're going to draw up some plan where it's saying this is what it's going to look like, the corridors, because I've searched a few times, but I haven't found anything. Even on the TVCA website, there's like a map, and it shows like from afar the lines where the plans have these corridors, and I know exactly where they are, but a lot of people don't. And
we want something
to have a visual.
Yeah, sorry, we want something drawn up that'll be really high level and zoomed out, that just has key corridors. It's colour coded. It's really easy to understand, and we know all of the detail behind that and how we would want to propose funding those corridors and where the mechanisms of 106, for example, kicks in, and we're able to accelerate some of those. So we are about to start that. We kind of just got a bit of internal approval to do this before Christmas, so we want to work. We'll speak to key councillors as well, through our exec member, as well, as to how we kind of, it might be worth looking, getting advice from the likes of yourselves and what your constituents say some of the problems are, because obviously we only get the odd complaint in that this bus route isn't good here, the cycle network's poor here, it's not safe there. So I think we'll bring something probably to a group of councillors to kind of say, what do you guys think of this? Is this fit for purpose, before we then go out and kind of consult and show the wider public here?
Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks.
Councillor Arundel.
Thanks, Chair. Acklam Road already has cycle lanes on it. I don't know what the width of the road as it stands. I don't know what much else you can do, to be quite honest. I know it would be very desirable to do more, but given the volume of traffic that uses that road, I don't know how much of that road you could dedicate to anything else other than road traffic. Difficult one. I mean, some years ago they talked about putting a tram along that road, and it just fell down because they realised that they just couldn't. The width of the road wouldn't accommodate. It's the same with bus lanes. If you put a bus lane down Acklam Road and a bus lane down Linthorpe Road, the traffic congestion would be horrendous. So it's a difficult situation. The problem is all these roads were built in the days before car ownership was as it is, and so therefore it wasn't thought about. And it's difficult to do something with what you've already got, rather than from the very beginning, as is what's being talked about with these new developments. So I'm afraid it's a difficult one to solve, to be quite honest, Theo. I don't know how we get out of that, to be honest.
With Acklam Road as a case in point, Councillor, I suppose it's about it's a stretch on its own, if you like, and I suppose it's about connecting that to a wider network, so people have options of going elsewhere, or it joins on to other parts that will run you through towards the town or towards the south of the town, rather than it just being a start-stop. So yes, it's not ideal to do it retrospectively, but this is where we embed it in planning policy, in our local infrastructure plans and such, to try and get ahead of new developments, but also have a strong plan for retrospectively using the infrastructure that's already there and we can do very little about.
Just another point to add to that. I feel I'm taking up loads of time, so please tell me to be quiet if you don't want to hear my dulcet tones anymore. I just wanted to kind of say, I think what we've noticed recently with some of the studies that we've done and load of things into the transport models across the town is we don't have a significant problem all day. It's at 2 key times of the day. And effectively it's your school and commuting times. So it's probably from around 7:45 until 9:15 in the morning, and probably 2:45 until maybe 5 o'clock. That's when we've got the main constraints on the network. So, and I think Councillor Arundale's right. You know, Acklam Road is a case in point. It's difficult. Doesn't mean that there are things that we can't do or can't look at. We've got some ideas, but it's about modal shift as well, because yeah, we're constrained with the likes of Acklam Road. It wasn't built to handle the amount of vehicles that it currently handles. And not that we're trying to reduce vehicles, but maybe homework and things like that might change longer term people's travel habits. You know, the likes of all of us are all working from home today. So, you know, we haven't got our cars on the road at those key times. And I think we'll see how that kind of bears resemblance to some normality in the future as well, and how we can take that forward.
Thank you. I'd just like to make a quick point, if that's sorry, Craig. I like the infrastructure plan. That'd be really good. And you know, if councils can be involved in that, that'd be fantastic. My concern is that unless there's a macro event that happens in society in general, I don't necessarily think you're going to have a fundamental shift in people's mode of transportation. I think I don't disagree with anything any of the panel members have said. I think when it comes to bus services, absolutely, it's like a chicken and egg situation, and there needs to be an investment to provide the routes first to then attract people onto that, and that's a matter probably for the TVC as opposed to yourselves. I drive on Cargo Fleet Lane every day, and that is another example, like Acklam Road, of roads built without maybe foresight of the future traffic that can occur. And then I think about Staten Way, because if you look at the local plan and the number of houses that are planned for the south of Middlesbrough, and you factor like every house now might have maybe 1 to 2 cars each, and then you look at the vibrant commercial hub that the Parkway Centre is, and again, it is only at certain times of the day. It's not continuous, to be fair, but I would like to speak in favour of motorists to some degree and say that as part of the infrastructure plan, to have the foresight of the future house building in mind, definitely provide more bus routes and more cycle lanes, absolutely. But I just don't envisage, unless the cost of motoring increases exponentially, and it is going up, it's becoming more expensive to drive a car, but I think even with more cycle lanes and bus routes, the culture of using your car, I think, is quite embedded, and I don't envisage that going away fundamentally unless there's a macro change. So I'd like to say that I don't want Staten Way in the future to become another Acklam Road or another Cargo Fleet Lane, and as part of the infrastructure plan, to consider having more roads or wider roads. But again, I appreciate that's a bit of a fairy tale shopping list, and the funding isn't there to build or maintain roads. I completely appreciate that, but if we're going to have a best case scenario plan, I do think you need to factor that in as well. So thanks, Craig.
Just to add to that, Councillor, you're exactly right. It is chicken and egg, and it applies to the bus operators and any investments that we do. The bus operators, the train operators want ready-made demand for that route that'll be guaranteed to a certain level before investing in a specific route. There is definite inertia in terms of people using modal shift, because until you've got those credible alternatives, and I'm not sure our network does provide credible alternatives to the fullest extent, it is just piecemeal until we do that. But that requires huge investment on probably a Pantees Valley level or a national level to get the likes of I mean, it'd be on a moderate scale, of course, but a TfL or the Manchester's networks, even Newcastle's and Leeds, they're all integrated in a much more coherent way, and the demand is there, and it's chicken and egg. If people will use the services if they're provided, but nobody will provide the services unless they're guaranteed that they're going to be used. So it's really difficult.
I think one of the things that we as transport professionals, I say loosely, officers, it's one of the things that we often notice it, and I think one of the things we can probably best hope for in some occasions as well is for traffic usage in and around Middlesbrough to be that of the school holidays. That's your 20% reduction, and that makes I think we all notice that makes a massive, massive difference. And if we can grow the town in the housing developments and commercial developments that we want, but we can live with that school holiday level of traffic, we are onto an absolute winner. And I think, as you said, Councillor Walker, we're not kind of anti-car, anti-motorist. Then everyone is enabled to use the network, and that would be almost a utopia. So that is, as a transport professional, what I am professionally trying to aim for. So I'll try my best.
Thanks, Greg. Thank you. Councillor Platt?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I agree with you and your comments about people wanting to use the car. I actually live in Low Lane, and I can honestly say that hardly anybody uses the cycle lane. The majority of cyclists that go past my house use the road. So I think you've spent probably £1 million on that cycle lane, and to me, it could have been better spent somewhere else.
Yeah, I take that on board, Councillor. We've had a number of residents in the local area, particularly on Low Lane itself. I live in the local area as well. I'm not out at commuter time, so I can't comment on commuter cyclists using it. But a lot of what I've noticed along the Low Lane area now is families using it for leisure time. Lots of parents with young children riding the bikes, which is a good thing to see. But again, we have to build it for people to use it, and inevitably usage will probably be low to start with, but we are monitoring, and we do hope that that is going to continue to grow. I would like it to be used for commuting, because for one of the reasons why that was put in was to obviously join with the work that we've done in recent years on Ladgate Lane in particular. There's nearly 1,000 members of staff working at James Cook that live at Ingleby Barwick, and the hospital were always getting complaints that there wasn't a safe cycling route for those people, so that's why they used the car. So a big chicken and egg, but yeah, I take it on board. But if we build it, we do hope they'll come.
Yeah, and just one more point of clarification as well. It's not a compromise necessarily with these investments. It's not as if we are spending this in lieu of spending money on something else, because the money is often targeted or drawn down from a very specific purpose. So by not spending £1 million here, we can't just spend it on social care or alternatives like that. It has to be for the purpose for which it's awarded.
Yeah, we'll happily take government money if it's for walking and cycling, and we'll find the best place we believe to put it, because why should Middlesbrough not have it as opposed to someone else?
That's great. Is there any other questions from members, or is that Councillor Branson? Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's about cycling. I mean, I often see people cycling down the road when you've got a cycle track just a few yards away. I had my own experience here. I once tried to cycle through Ingleby Barwick and got totally lost using the cycle tracks. You don't know where you are necessarily. So one of the things that's most important to people is to have a map, a plan of where the cycle routes are. We don't have very many of those, and they're not easy to get hold of. And maybe I'm thinking of signage rather than a specific map you can pick up, because a lot of our cycle tracks and roads, and I'm thinking Colbingham, aren't designed to be the most direct route. They're a very nice route, but they're not always direct. And until you know where those paths are, eventually you're going to give up and go along the road, because at least you know where the road leads to. So maybe there's an issue there of publicity, of publicising information so that people know exactly where that cycle track is and the fastest way to get from A to B. I don't know how easy that is to do, but I think it's something we need to do. Otherwise, we're always going to have people choosing to go along the road rather than going on the cycle track.
Yeah, I mean, we've got a cycle map plan of the town. We haven't had paper copies of it printed in the last couple of years as well, which we probably do need to do kind of an update on that. It is all available online, but I do take your point, Councillor. I think signage isn't particularly great, and I know my colleague Chris is wanting to kind of embark upon a new cycle signage strategy for the town. In particular, I think what people now want to do is know that it's 5 minutes on a bike, not 1.5 miles or 2 miles, because they don't know what that equates to. So if you cycle 5 minutes down the road, then where will you end up? And I think we've got to join all those little dots up to make it. You mentioned Colby Newham. I think yeah, it's probably not a commuter network for cycling. It's more of a leisure. It takes people around, and I think we need to be mindful of how we take that forward as well. But I think looking at commuter routes and then looking at leisure routes, but I take that on board. Signage is definitely key to making it a better network.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I want to thank Sam and Craig for their attendance. I didn't mean to talk down your attendance earlier on, and I apologise if I did that. But genuinely, thank you for coming. It's been very productive. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, thanks everyone.
Thank you. So the next agenda item is agenda item number 6, which is the date of the next meeting, which is the 9th of February 2022. Agenda item number 7 is the overview, the OSB update. I've made notes on that. So the previous meeting of the Overview and Scrutiny Board was held on the 7th of December 2021. In attendance was the Deputy Mayor, who at the time had the Executive Portfolio for Culture and Communities. The member gave a brief verbal update on her portfolio, which initially focused on the application for £5 million of funding from the Arts Council, for which part of this funding, if obtained, would go towards sorry, I've got a slight stammer when I read. It would go towards the development of the Central Library. Members did ask about funding for community centres and parks in the town, for which the executive member acknowledged the challenges, but was hopeful that more investment could be found from the potential funding from the Arts Council and the levelling up funds from central government that had been made available. We were then given an update from the Chief Executive of the Council, which focused primarily on COVID statistics in Middlesbrough as they existed at that point in time. The Chief Executive then gave a presentation on the process of setting the strategic plan for the Council, which will then be presented to full Council on the 23rd of February. And finally, the OSB panel was presented with an update on the revenue and capital budget as of Q2 for the year ending 2022. For this year, the projected non-COVID overspend is 2.6 million, which represents 2.2% of the overall revenue budget for the year. This is going to be covered partly by the full utilisation of the Social Care Demand Reserve of £500,000 and the Children's Services Reserve of £700,000. The remaining projected overspend will then be funded from the 4.5 million COVID Recovery Reserve, which was created in 2020 to cover potential costs arising from the COVID-19 recovery in 2021 and future years. So yeah, I appreciate that was a bit of a comprehensive review, but is there any questions on that, or is that okay? That's great, thank you. I'll move on to the next agenda item, which is any other urgent items which the chair may consider. I'm not aware of any urgent items, so I will draw the meeting to a close. Thank you very much,